Good night.
Drew?
What?
Where do you think you're going?
First of all, don't call me Drew. You can call me Andrew, Andy, but not Drew. Second of all, I got other things to do.
You still got overtime to do.
I don't need overtime. And wait a minute, I don't even think I work for you.
Other kids beg for overtime. Maybe I should hire one of them.
And also, there's not even a door here. Hello friends, welcome back to the show. So glad to see all of you once again. And if you're new here, thanks for stopping by. This is the channel where we go back and look at cartoons that we grew up on and look at them from the perspective of being an adult. And right now, we're working our way through a series talking about Batman Beyond. So if this fits in your generation, or you just have an interest in Batman DC animated shows, then stick around because we've got plenty of content coming your way. And if you're really interested, hit that subscribe button so that you're notified when new episodes come out. Like today's episode, Payback, which originally aired on May 13th, 2000.
Sorry, hon, we're all out of your size.
Well, this episode truly was another surprisingly good episode. I feel like we're on a good trend lately, but there are elements of this episode which I feel like are just kind of repurposed plot points of Mask of the Phantasm. Stick around and see if you agree with my assessment of this episode. Before we get into all that, we're going to give you a 60-second Mad Stand Bomb rundown of the episode. Here we go. There's a new anti-hero in town, Payback, that comes in and swoops in and is trying to help Batman stop bad doers. And he goes, oh, you can't do that. And he gets away. And then they find this link between the victims of Payback and this youth center in Gotham so Terry goes in to infiltrate and goes in there talking about his problems. And he meets up with the doctor. And then while he's looking around, he meets up with Howard, his assistant, and his son. And he goes, oh yeah, it's got to be Howard. That's the guy. Because when I was looking up stuff, I got knocked out. And so he goes in there and beats him up, and the guy goes, wow, what are you talking about? That laser was for my sculptures. And he goes, oh, shoot, I was wrong. And Bruce scolds him, and he goes, you can't jump to conclusions. Well, I know. And then it's just not him. It's got to be the doctor. So he goes in there, and while he's infiltrating that, then he finds out, oh, it's not the doctor. It's the guy's son that was trying to stop the problems, fix the problems for his dad so that his dad could spend more time with him. Oh, yeah. Getting better at it. Not really, I just got lucky.
Sorry, pal. Not even close.
So I do like the start of this episode. Again, jumping right into the action, establishing a scene, and the anti-hero guy, the villain or whatever, shows up and Batman tries to stop him, and we're just right into the action. However, at the same time, there's a lot of episodes that kind of start off with this formula. Something bad happens, Batman comes in to try to stop him, he gets away, they do some detective work, try to figure out a new angle, how to stop him, and then they go and stop him.
The good news is I finally met him face to face.
I don't know if I can say anything bad about it because it is a very good, convenient way of getting into the story and certainly sets it up rather than having all this setup and researching right at the beginning. Let's grab our attention right at the beginning and talk about have some action and have some things to happen right there up front.
Whoa, I want one.
But it's also kind of interesting that like this action point that we had to spring off from, which makes sense as the story evolves, but it's kind of low end action that this guy is avenging an employee that's treated poorly by his boss.
Don't respect the kids who work for you.
A little overreaching. Again, it makes sense once the story develops, but it was one of those things, yeah, he breaks in and he wrecks this store and that, but for Bruce to kind of jump in and try to stop him. But the motive behind the action was a little light.
That's it?
And they did something very smart in this scene, which I can't think of a specific moment where they've done this before in this term, is that the Batman, Terry McGinnis Batman, has been around long enough that presumably there's other things that are going on that we don't see in the episodes. And in this one, this guy, the shadowy dark figure, shows up and goes, I'm gonna avenge this, take care of this kid that's treated badly at his job. And Batman shows up and goes, oh, it must be Payback.
Your new ally.
Ally.
So at the very least, like he may not have had a run-in with this character prior to this episode, but he knew who he was. So we at least started with that much information for Batman to have, rather than it being, oh, here's the introduction of the character to us, but also to Batman as well. And he's learning about this character for the first time. Like I said, some of that needed to happen in those early episodes, season 1, especially because we're establishing all new characters and Batman's new, and so he's got to be meeting these guys for the first time. But in this situation, now that he's been around a little longer, there's at least the perception that things have been happening when we haven't been seeing the episodes play out, which I like that.
This Payback guy thinks he's some sort of vigilante.
Something else that I liked in that opening scene, I know I'm spending a lot on this opening scene, but there was a lot layered in there, which is always a good sign. It's just this one little line that the owner says,
You couldn't fight the guy outside?
that is a subject matter that I know has been brought up in a couple of different movies, Batman versus Superman and that sort of thing, of like the damage that these heroes cost to the city or to property and things like that. And I thought that was kind of a new idea. And I was like, yeah, why hasn't anybody been talking about this? Like how much damage that, especially Superman, causes when he's trying to save the day. Entire buildings falling down and cars getting wrecked and all this kind of thing. But here it is. Here's an episode of a kid's show 20 years ago that is at least acknowledging that, at least acknowledging the store owner to go, hey, gee, thanks for saving me, but now look at my store.
I had the manager and Drew to worry about.
And I like that. I like at least acknowledging like kind of a real world response to this and not just like, oh, thank you for saving me. Even though I've got to now, I assume he has insurance, but like, gosh, that's such a process. I got to file this insurance claim and I got to, tell the story about how the superhero came in here and trashed the place and nobody's going to believe me and on and on and on. But they at least acknowledge that in this, which I appreciate.
But the bad news is you didn't stop him.
This episode takes us back to some good old-fashioned detective work. Even Bruce mentions that that's what they're going to do.
We did do detective work before there was a net.
And what I like about that is, especially being in the future and being in a place where technology, and even now, like in the world that we live in now, so much detective work can happen through Googling and through computers. And, we have these devices in our pockets that we can just look up anything and Facebook, and you can find so much out about people on Facebook that it takes some of the romance out of detective stories. And I think that that's why I tend to favor like those old-fashioned 1940s detective shows and stories, because it's a different style where you have to actually like follow somebody through the streets and you gotta, pick up the phone and trace phone calls and ask the operator to reconnect you with the old number. Those kinds of things that they don't exist anymore. Somebody calls me and it shows up on the caller ID, whether it's somebody that I know or not.
So much for that lead.
Here's a story that obviously this is even in the future from now. And there's a lot of great technology and there's a lot of great computer, and obviously Bruce has all this technology at his disposal. But for the authors to find a way of like creating a scenario where, okay, we got to go do some old-fashioned detective work. You've got to go in and infiltrate. And we see that a couple of times where Terry has to actually like go in either as himself or as a character and do some things that even Batman himself can't do, just to like get to the bottom of this or to research some different elements. So I like that when they introduce those elements into the story.
No, I do, really.
What's your problem then?
Just a production note in this, and is that the colors seemed a little off in this episode. Something, I don't know if it was like they switched studios that was doing their animation or whatnot, but just something that kind of I noticed, and maybe it's just a DC Universe thing, that this was where I watched these episodes, that it was a little off in the color matching or in how it was graded when it uploaded the streaming service or whatnot, or if this episode was done a little different. But it seemed like, or the blacks of Batman's suit was a little muted, was like more of a gray than a black. But I don't know, maybe that's just me, or maybe, I don't know if it's like that on the DVDs or whatnot.
Now do you believe me?
And then speaking of design, we have a new character that's introduced, Payback, which is a kind of an anti-hero sort of character that's trying to do good but doing it the wrong way.
If you're not with me, then you're the enemy too.
This is not a new character. I mean, not a new type of character. We saw this in, Lockup in Batman the Animated Series of like somebody that's trying to do good. I like the way they set this character up, and certainly, I'll get into it more later, but the way of who this mystery character is, I think was well done. But just talking about the character itself, to me it felt, I mean, as soon as I saw this character, I thought, oh, it's Phantasm from Batman Mask of the Phantasm, which, by the way, if you haven't seen my review of that I did with my wife, you can click up here to see that. I mean, even just the look of the character with the tattered kind of cloak and the voice modulation and all that felt very much like Phantasm. I don't know, let me know if you guys thought the same thing.
You're a mean old man, you know that.
Which, you know, again, is not inherently an issue because it certainly was a different type of character. But even their kind of motives of like, hey, I'm trying to avenge those that have had wrong done to them was a very Phantasm kind of motivator.
You should have respected the people you didn't fear.
But I think in this context of it being with Batman Beyond, I thought it was a little bit of a challenging design to put into this show. You know, you look at Batman Beyond, his kind of design is all black, full cowl mask with just the red emblem on him. And then you put him up against another villain that is also all black with a full face mask. You know, it just seems very similar.
I know what you're doing and you're nuts.
But anyway, I don't know, just on a design standpoint, seemed a little off. But then again, that may be the reason why Batman's colors were off. Maybe this character was supposed to be more gray, and then they accidentally made Batman more gray too, and it just seems too matchy-matchy.
I just feel like I'm never gonna be good enough for him.
But again, I like the way that this story kind of unfolded. I think it's always a positive when I'm watching an episode, I keep guessing, you know, and they acknowledge the guesses that would happen. And a perfect example of this is in my notes, I had said that Terry goes in there and says all this stuff about Batman, or about Bruce, actually.
It's like he thinks he's the only one in the whole world who could ever do this job right.
And after they know that somebody at this facility is seeing that footage and going and attacking the people that have done wrong to the students, and I thought, well, why would he go in there and say all that? And then, of course, Bruce is going to get hurt, and he even told him where he was going to be.
Except tonight he's going to be at that big party at the new hotel.
And yet, that's exactly what the plan was. And it's sort of that element of writing where you want the writing of the story to just be one step, two steps ahead of the audience, rather than being behind the audience in terms of like, I saw that was a bad idea. So then to be revealed later that, oh, that was all part of the plan was a pleasant surprise versus it being the other way around and telling the audience, okay, Terry, I want you to go in there and tell them all this bad stuff about me so that they come and attack me and then you'll be there and save the day. They left that scene out so that we would continue to guess. I like that. That is a great way of telling a story.
Look, I don't want to talk about this anymore, okay?
There's a great line in there when Bruce is faced with his worst nightmares that he gets to say.
You have no idea what my nightmares are like.
It's one of those lines that's so simple, but because Batman has so much history, Bruce Wayne, I should say, has so much history and so much backstory to him, we as fans hear something like that and know exactly what he's talking about, but there's still a little intrigue and a little mystery.
You called it.
Those moments, and I know I'm a Bruce Wayne fan, but it's moments like that that really accelerate this show, that we acknowledge enough of the history of Bruce Wayne and his legacy in these episodes that play out well versus just kind of cleaning the slate and having a whole new group of characters that don't have that legacy. That there's moments like this, opportunities that are available to kind of drop these little elements in and go, oh, yeah, I know what he's talking about. It's just a great tool to be able to not overuse, but have those moments where you can kind of pepper them in here and there is really kind of fun.
But from now on, we're handling it my way.
And again, I think that anytime you keep guessing in these shows is a good sign. You know, I, like Terry, thought, oh, obviously it's this Howard guy. And I was a little disappointed when I figured it out so easily that it was like, well, obviously it's him. And they played into that, and they used that as part of the story, and they made that a deliberate red herring for us to kind of focus on this Howard guy, and I completely forgot about the son and the story that was established with the son feeling like he was being neglected because his dad was always working. I completely forgot about that because I was so transfixed on, well, it's got to be Howard. This is the guy. He's even built like him. I believe it was even the same voice actor that they used to kind of really throw the audience off. And I love playing with those elements. Again, being that much ahead of the audience rather than us ahead of the story and going, okay, well, I know who it's going to be. Obviously, it's this guy. And even the moment that's established with Bruce and Terry of like him kind of flying off the handle and jumping to conclusions, and Bruce Wayne being a little bit more methodical about it and going, no, you can't just go head first in there. Let's rely on the detective work and the information we have and not just go with your gut all the time.
Maybe he is, maybe he isn't.
All those things kind of played together to make a really well-rounded story that it all worked. And when you finally saw the kid in the suit, that you went, oh, yeah, I should have known that. Why didn't I figure that out? That makes perfect sense. And then you think back to the episode and you go, oh, yeah, they gave me all the information there that the kid was feeling neglected and wanted to spend more time with his dad, all those elements, and I just missed it. And I just kind of wrote it off as detailed writing, but they were actually telling me the answer to the mystery. And those are the stories that really connect and really work for me.
He must have thought if he solved my patient's problems, I'd have more time for him.
And in the end, it all just being a good teachable moment for Bruce and Terry, which again is the element that I want to see more of in this story, in these shows, is Bruce training Terry and teaching Terry and mentoring Terry. And we have that moment at the end of this episode.
Learn from it. That's all you can do.
So when it comes time to rank this episode, it's another episode that really kind of surprised me. It was very enjoyable. What started out as kind of being like, oh, I see where this episode's going to go, kind of totally threw me for a loop and introduced this great mystery. I fell hook, line, and sinker, as they say. And I know I'm kind of gullible when it comes to mysteries and TV shows. Maybe that's why I'm such a fan, because they always work on me. I think even just in the structure of the episode, the way that they kind of set it up as like, oh yeah, here's this formula of a plot that you've seen time and time again, and then they pull the old switcheroo on you and go, oh, actually, it's not what you thought, and it's not what you think, and kind of align the audience to be thinking the way that Terry was thinking, and have Bruce come in and explain why he was wrong. I like that. Those are the stories that always keep my attention. So for all those reasons, I have this falling at the number 4 spot of my favorite episodes. Again, well rooted in the top 10. And I think, yeah, I favored it a little bit more because it was so surprising and so pleasantly surprising at how good it was, that I felt confident putting it that high on the list. I do have it just below Dead Man's Hand, and I think, again, those are, I think, simply because of the Rogues Gallery element. So many ways I watch Batman because I love the villains, and for me, Payback as a villain wasn't as strong as the Dead Man's Hand or the Royal Flush Gang, so that bumped that one up just a little higher. But I do have this one beating out Hooked Up, because as much as I enjoy Spellbinder and I enjoy the way that story was and all the fantasy kind of elements to it, this one had a much better mystery. And I like the way that this mystery unfolded versus that one. They kind of laid out all their cards. They explained, here's who's doing it, this is what's going on. The mystery was spoiled for us as an audience, even though Terry was still trying to figure it out. So this one, I kind of enjoyed that we were trying to figure it out right alongside Terry, was just enough to beat that one out.
You must have given quite a convincing performance.
So let me know. I talked a little bit about the similarities between Phantasm and Payback. Do you agree with me? Do you see the similarities? Do you think that was done deliberately, or just like they're kind of trying to recycle old material because the focus wasn't as much on the villain as it was just the mystery? And I know sometimes it's tough to like come up with a new villain every week, but in this case, it felt a little too similar. Or is that just me that thinks it's similar? Let me know in the comment section below. If you enjoyed this episode, please click the like button. If you want to see more episodes like this, just hit subscribe. If you can't wait till then, I've got some other reviews over here that you can watch, but I have new reviews coming out every week, like next week, Where's Terry? Let's find out together. Until then, thank you so much for watching. I'm Andy Knode, and I'll see you soon.